So he wanted to devise a way, Emilius wanted to devise a way that he could get this throne. So he killed all the boys, but he was afraid to kill this one girl. Her name was Rhea. So what he decided to do was to get Rhea, send Rhea to guard the fountains of regeneration, fire of the fountain called the Vestal, the Vesta. And these ladies who guarded this fire were called Vestal virgins. And they all had to be virgins to guard this fire, which is in Egyptian mythology, the fire represents the sun god Ra, which represents eternity and morality. So they had these Vestal virgins to guard this fire. So he was still wanting to get rid of her. So he sent someone down to persuade her to have sex. Because if she had sex, she had betrayed her the obligation she had in her duty to stay a virgin. So in any case, she was raped, and she had sex, and therefore she was sent to prison, and she had these two children. One of them was called a Romulus, where you get the word Rome and romantic from, and Remus. And these boys, they grew up and they used to go in the forest. They went in the forest and they would steal from the rich and give to the poor. I guess you can hear this Robin Hood thing coming out, because this is where the story comes from. In any case, they were caught, and one of them was put in jail, basically. And his brother, Romulus, wanted to get Remus out of jail. And so he devised a scheme to do this. As I mentioned, they stole from the rich and gave to the poor, and Remus, of course, was caught, and he wanted to get his brother out of jail. And in any case, he got an army together and eventually got his brother out of jail, and they had to get away from the Sabinas. So they established their own city on a mountain. And Remus was kind of like copying off his brother, and he jumped, and imitating his brother, he jumped and he fell and he killed himself. So that only left Romulus, where you get the word Rome from. And he established a city, and the boys had to go on a mountain and strip naked and find a companion and be with a companion. And so basically Rome was founded by homosexuals. So they had this homosexual city with young boys and their companions. And they had one problem: they couldn't have any children, so they had to devise a way to get women. So they came up with a scheme to get these women to come to their hill, to their empire. So they sent out word around the countryside that they were going to have a great festival, and it's going to be wonderful things and food and drink. And so the people from the other city brought their women and their children to this great festival. So when they came to the festival that Rome was giving these homosexual men, they needed the women so they could have offspring. And the only way to get women was to come up with this festival so they could get people from the other village to come. So when the ladies came with their husbands and their children, they surrounded the women and got the husbands off into another section, and then they raped the women so they could have children. And that's how they founded Rome, basically off of raping these women. But of course the men were mad at them for raping their wives and their daughters. But they told them that they raped the women, but the women were now Romans, and they could share in their wealth and everything and get all the benefits of being a Roman. So the other men agreed that it was all right for them to rape their mothers and their daughters and things like that. And so they were able to keep their homosexual city alive, and that city was called Rome. And that's where you get the word romance, meaning to have sex with men. And of course the women had to participate in homosexuality because that was part of being indoctrinated into the Romanist cult. And that's where you get this Rome word from. Again, we're back into these stories and fairy tales, and they show up everywhere in various aspects. Now I'm going to show you, when I was mentioning these rituals to you, the psychological mind of the European, as reflected in the fairy tales by Freud and Jung and those who dissect them, say that these sexual rituals and ceremonies are conflict, because it's natural for a woman to have sex with a man in African culture, but in European culture it's natural for a woman to have sex with a woman and a man to have sex with a man. So these sexual rituals, when a man has sex with a woman, it's a conflict, and they call it a battle of sex. The woman wants to have sex with a son, the woman wants to have sex with a daughter, or a prostitute, or another man, which we call adulterer. That's what the mother wants. And the mother wants to have sex with the daughters, with the boyfriend, with the daughter's boyfriend or girlfriend, or masturbate. And masturbate with focusing on the image of her daughter or her daughter's boyfriend or girlfriend. The daughter wants to have sex with her father, with the mother, or with sibling, be it her brother or sister. That's what the daughter wants. The father wants to have sex with the daughter, the son, or a friend of the daughter, or a friend of the son. This way he's having sex with the daughter if he has sex with the friend's daughter. He's having sex with the son if he has sex with the friend, with the son of the friend. Or he has sex with a prostitute or adulterer. Or he masturbates and visualizes in his mind his son or his daughter. The son wants to have sex with his mother, his father, his sister, his brother, or a prostitute. When he has sex with a prostitute, he visualizes having sex with his mother or father, or with his sister or his brother. And this is where you get the battle of the sexes, that men are basically adulterous, meaning that they're basically homosexual in the European way of thinking, and the ladies are basically adulterous. As you know, Cosmopolitan, which is a white magazine, took a survey, and the white women said that 60% of them have adulterous relationships. And since the sexual relationship is based on fantasy, according to Freud and Jung, they visualize having sex with their son and daughter when they have sex with a woman or when they're masturbating, because masturbating is basically a sexual and emotional crime in our culture, but it's a form of life with the Europeans. And here you have the symbolism of a penis. The broom, as the witches, transports herself on a man's penis. You see, this is a form of castration to men, her having control over the penis. And this is what the European lady obviously wants, to have a penis of her own. And that's why you have so many negative things about men in their culture, that men are wolves. And as you know, there's a disease amongst white women called lupus, and lupus means wolf. The men are wolves in sheep's clothing, meaning they're deceitful and cruel like a dog. And the men change into wolves. They go into their animal nature. That's where you get this story here about Cupid. We get into the mythology or belief, folk belief about Cupid. And Cupid's mother was jealous of a lady called Psyche. There was a lady called Psyche, and she was beautiful, and she was young, and she was one of the daughters, like you have the daughters in Cinderella. This is what this Cinderella story is based on. It's the English version of this Cupid story. So Psyche was her name, and she was beautiful, and men used to come and look at her, and Venus became jealous of Psyche. And so Psyche decided to send her son, whose name was Cupid, to get Cupid to get Psyche to marry a bad person, a man who was a wolf, who meant her no good whatsoever. But when Cupid went to Psyche, he ironically fell in love with her. So, since Psyche was so beautiful, none of the men wanted to marry her. So her father, whose name was, his name is unimportant, the father was a king, and he consulted an oracle, someone who had visions. And the oracle said, take her to a mountain, and a serpent would marry her and do her no good whatsoever. So what happened was Psyche was dressed as if she was going to die, and at the same time dressed as if she was going to be married. So she was taken to the mountain, and a Xiphus, which is a bird, came down and took her away to a valley where there was a house for her and gold and plenty to eat and music. And she had servants who waited on her, but she never saw them. She just heard their voice. If she wanted something, it was brought to her. And she would go to bed at night, and when she go to bed, her husband would come to her and have sex, but she never saw her husband. And so her sisters wondered where she was, and she wrote her sisters and told her sisters where she was, and her sisters came to visit her. But her husband had warned her at night, one night when he was having sex with her, and said, don't listen to your sisters. Don't listen to them at all. They mean you no good whatsoever. But her sisters came and said, you know what you need to do? You need to get yourself a lamp and a knife and put a lamp and see who this husband is of yours and kill him. Because what he wants to do is get you pregnant and eat you and eat the baby. So Psyche took the advice of her sisters and got the lamp, and a little bit of the oil dropped on her husband. And when she put the lamp to her husband, she saw that her husband was Cupid. That's why she had the greatest love in the world and the best sex and all that, because she was actually married to Cupid. And she realized what she had done, but she dropped that oil on Cupid, and Cupid was hurt by it, and he left her and went back to his mother, who was Venus. And his mother was mad at him because she told Cupid to have him, Psyche, marry someone bad to do her no good whatsoever. But Cupid disobeyed her, so his wife Psyche had to go through these trials and tribulations, and ended up going back to Venus and trying to ask Venus for forgiveness, because she didn't want to be held higher than Venus and make Venus jealous. But Venus had made her go through these deeds, said you had to separate all these seeds, millet seeds, sesame seeds. She threw them in a pile, said you had to do this, you had to do that, and all these kind of obstacles that Psyche had to overcome. But Psyche, she accomplished all these obstacles, the same as Hercules did. And so Cupid went to Jupiter, who was his father, and asked his father to intervene, and asked Mercury, who Mercury means communication, to call the gods and have a conference so he could get with his wife. And so Jupiter's father, Psyche, he was the father of the gods, so he got all the gods together, and they gave Psyche a drink to give her immortality, so she could marry Cupid. They gave her a red liquor, which is symbolically wine, and killed her. So now she's in a spirit form, and therefore she can marry this spirit called Cupid. And so Cupid and Psyche got together, and they had a child called Voluptus. That's where you get the word voluptuous at. So that once they killed her, she could be with man because she was pure. As long as a woman's alive, she's evil and cannot be trusted. That's part of the myth in this Cupid thing. And a lot of people say they want to get struck by Cupid's arrow and fall madly in love and that sort of thing, not realizing what it's tied to. It's tied to this Greek and Roman mythology. That's where you get Cupid and Psyche. As you can see, this is Psyche dropping the oil on Cupid, her lover, and hurting him, which the oil caused him to go insane, because it's believed that women cause men to go insane because men are pure and women are evil. Then the mythology progresses to the Romans, the children of Mars, that sort of thing, as you can see from you have Sybil here, and you have Pomoda and Bertmus. Basically, you have the story of Pandora, Pandora's box, where they believe that beauty and all that's in this box of women, which is supposed to be their vagina. And the objective is destroy the box of women with your penis. And therefore, you have to call on the mess, which are the cow gods, Bacula. That's why people say, I made a mess. And these are the cow gods, to turn into birds and change man into a bird so he can rule over women. Ugly mythology. Then you have Greek, as we went through the Greek mythology. This is Prometheus and Pandora's box, which is the secret of beauty and all that, and Demeter and Orpheus and Apollo and Hercules, which they call Hercules. So we have these major themes that go over and over and over again in the fairy tales. You have the three sisters, Psyche's sister, you have the sisters in Cinderella, the three bears, the three pigs, the three wise men. You have black and dark colors, which mean evil. You have good, which is light colors. All this is embedded in the fairy tales. You have eternal life in the fairy tales, a myth, rebirth, which means you want to stay young forever, a Peter Pan syndrome, Sleeping Beauty who stays young forever. And you sacrifice the child by murdering the child. Children are always sacrificed in the fairy tales. Rockabye baby on the treetop, when the wind blows, the cradle will drop, and all that sort of thing, where children violence is perpetrated upon them. And only a savior or prophet can rescue you from your evilness. That's where you get the Wizard of Oz and knights in shining armors and heroes like Hercules. And basically, people have animal desires for sex. That's represented by giants, King Kong, who's after this white woman and climbs up a steeple, the Empire State Building, which means the penis. And you have Moby Dick, which represents the penis. A man tried to overcome that in the water, of the woman, which is the amniotic fluid. Then you have women. They never have a victory, and they cannot have success without being raped in some way, having sex. They have to be seduced to have sex in fairy tales. But I went over the story with you earlier, the Egyptian story of Osiris and Isis, showing you where these stories, these myths come from. You have Isis and Osiris, and you have the Ankh, and you have the sun and the horns. We went over that story earlier. But if you follow European stories, what eventually will happen is it will lead you against your culture and basically put you in the crust of the Europeans. You'll either be in a psychological prison locked up in their culture, or you'll be in a physical prison, because the fairy tales want you. They want you in prison in some way. They're about keeping black people in captivity. Let's look at some of these things. Let's look at how innocent they are. We have rub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in a tub. And who do you think they be? The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. They all gone off on a spree. 3 men, the 3 pigs, the 3 wise men. Again, the same theme. You have the butcher, the destroyer, the baker who makes things, fashions man, and the candlestick, which means the penis. And once they have that together, along with the penis, they can all go out and spread their culture. The Romulus story, and Remus, the homosexual theme again. Then you have another homosexual theme, the hot cross buns, hot cross buns. The whelps are made on the buttocks of the boys who went up to the mountains. In Romulus and Remus story that I told you earlier, went up to the mountains naked and they met their companion, and to be initiated in the cult they would whip them across their behinds with whips, and it caused whelps, crossings of whelps on their behind, which made them sexually excitable for their companions. So they had basically hot cross buns. 1 penny, 2 penny, hot cross buns. If you have no daughters, remember we're back to that homosexual theme, and then give them to your sons. 1 penny, 2 penny, hot cross buns. So if you have no daughters, then you have to give the boys to the sons of the female mates, of the male mates, their companions. Hush, a-bye, baby, on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, bends, the cradle will fall. Down will come baby, cradle and all. This again is promoting violence to children, abuse of children. Who in their right mind would put a baby up in a tree in the first place? The tree represents the penis. We're missing the symbolism again. If you listen to it and read it, you say, why did they put the baby up in the tree in the first place? The tree of life and the tree of death. We went over that theme again. That's why the baby's in the tree. For every evil under the sun, there is a remedy, or there is none. If there be none, one, try and find it. If there be none, never mind it. If there's no remedy for evil, then never mind it. Just stay where you are. Again, it's reinforcing the destiny, that it's your fate to be condemned in the condition that you're in. These fairy tales are cultural conditioners. Let's look at Rapunzel. The story of Rapunzel. This is about a childless couple. Remember? Upstairs window, they sees a witch in the garden, and the wife wanted Rapunzel's the lettuce from that garden, from the witch's garden, and the wife was pale and weak, and she wanted that lettuce. She asked her husband to go get the lettuce for her, and he made her a salad, and she liked that salad, and she asked her husband to get some more. And the husband went to the garden to steal the witch's letter, the Rapunzel lettuce, and the witch caught him, and and the witch said, I want your firstborn. And the witch claimed the child and called her Rapunzel, named her after the lettuce that the man was stealing. And that caused sin and stealing to be in the world. And when the Rapunzel was 12 years old, the witch took her and locked her in a tower, and the tower represents the penis again, and her yellow hair represents ejaculation, and the tower had no windows. So the witch used the hair to climb up to the tower every day, or when she went to see Rapunzel, which means she used the semen of the man just to regenerate herself. And then a prince rode by and heard Rapunzel singing. It never says why Rapunzel didn't tie her hair and come slide down out the window, whip her hair, and then cut her hair. It never said that. But in any case, a prince came by and heard her hollering and singing, and he saw that the witch used her hair to get up there, so he wanted to take her for himself. So the prince asked Rapunzel to let down her hair, so he climbed up there, and Rapunzel, he wanted to take Rapunzel, and he made a ladder. I don't know why he didn't use a ladder to get his army anyway, since he was a prince, to get her to escape. So Rapunzel slipped one day and said to the witch, the prince climbs up faster than you. And so the witch got angry about that and cut her hair. And the prince came one day to see Rapunzel and said, let down your hair. And the witch said, your bird, no necks, and I hope a bird catch you and scratch out your eyes if you see Rapunzel. So the prince jumped from the tower, and he jumped into these bushes, and the bushes scratched out his eyes, and he became blind. And many years later, the prince wandered into the desert where Rapunzel was, and he heard her voice, and she was crying, and he fell in love with her, and she got a vision back. This is a gross story when you really listen to it. But it's about fertility, it's about sex, it's about ejaculation, it's about the embedding image in it. And then we have this pussy in the well. You can't get any more obvious about this one. Ding, dong, bell. You have the threes again, the three wise men and three pigs. Pussies in the well. The well representing the penis. The pussy representing the vagina, of course. And the pussy is in the bucket, and the bucket is in the semen. So we're getting the symbolism again, with the boy holding a penis again. And he's next to two horses, which we call bucks. And bucks are horses that breed. So we have the symbolism here of sex. And she, of course, is the female god. She has Hathor, the bell, again. So we reinforce using the African theme, distorting it, and associating it with sex. So when the African child does, so the association made is mostly a European one, unless we go back and retrieve it completely. Then we have Rapunzel, not Rapunzel, Rumpelstiltskin. Rump meaning but behind, and stilts are long things that men stand on, representing the penis. So you have the rump with the penis in the skin of the behind, which is a word that represents homosexuality. But the story is basically about a poor miller man who had a daughter, and the daughter, he told the king that his daughter could make gold out of straw, and the king came and took the daughter as his wife and took her back and said, you got to make this room that's full of straw into gold. And if you don't do that, then he would, of course, kill her. So the girl, she made the room out of the straw out of gold. And then this person came along, Rumpelstiltskin. He came along to help her make all of this straw into gold. And then the girl gave this dwarf, this Rumpelstiltskin character here, she gave him a ring. So the king came back to her again and said he would marry her, of course, but he demanded that she make other things into gold. But Rumpelstiltskin, in the meantime, he said what he wanted for making the straw into gold was her firstborn child. Always the firstborn child, mind you. Always kill the firstborn. That's what you call abortions, and that's what rubbers do. They kill the firstborn. So the theme is repeated so we can easily accept these kind of crimes against ourselves. But the dwarf, in 3 days, he told her he wouldn't take her firstborn if she could guess his name in 3 days. So she said ribs of beef. She said mutton chops, and she said all these things trying to guess his name. But a messenger overheard Rumpelstiltskin singing one day, and Rumpelstiltskin said his name, and he told the daughter the names, and therefore she was able to free herself from Rumpelstiltskin. But again, she's an innocent virgin being taken advantage of, and again, the theme is you can make something out of nothing. You can make gold out of nothing, straw. So everyone is searching from something for nothing, and that women are basically gold diggers. Why is it the lady didn't make gold for her father? It's beyond me. Why she wanted to make all the gold for the king when she could have made her father rich? The logic of the story has nothing to do with reality. It's about the embedding of an image. It's about passing on European culture. Then we have another theme. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread, then kissed them all soundly and put them to bed. Here's a lady, obviously has low morality. She has all these children. She lives in a shoe. She's feeding them from soup. She's obviously, women are not good. And that's the theme we have here. They're living in abject poverty. They have no help. They have no relatives. They have no friends. They're by themselves in a shoe. And this is her punishment for sex. See, this creates what we call behavioral themes. The relationship must be in conflict. Power, ritual, and ceremonial games, superior, inferior, European behavior is blended into spirituality and godliness. If you do not follow the rituals and ceremonies of the Europeans, you are ungodly, you're evil. We have rituals and ceremonies, we have books full of them. One of the books is called the Constitution of the United States. It's a book full of rituals and ceremonies. We have other books called law books. They're rituals and ceremonies of the Europeans. We have other books called economics, books on economics. It's rituals and ceremonies of the Europeans. And if you don't follow them, you're not practicing good economics, you're not following the law. They changed the name of their rituals and ceremonies. So this gives you the motive to follow them, these fairy tales. The European behavior is blended into science, biology, chemistry, astrology. If you do not follow the European rituals and ceremonies, you are not scientific, you are not smart, you're not following the law, you don't have good behavior. And all this is embedded over and over again by these fairy tales when you don't follow the logic of what's being done to your child. We have another one called Cinderella, where we have this man who's married, has his second wife. There's always a stepmother. This man's first wife died. I didn't mention what happened to Cinderella's father's first wife, but he marries his second wife, and his second wife, she's very cruel to Cinderella, and she has two ugly daughters. There are three daughters again, the three pigs, the three wise men. The theme of three is repeated over and over again. The father allows his cruel behavior to happen to Cinderella. He doesn't say anything about it, doesn't stop the stepmother from doing these things to Cinderella, having her scrubbing the floors and sleeping in the ashes, in the cinder. That's why they called her Cinderella. She slept in the ashes basically to purify herself with a man instinct in her. And the king announces that there's a ball and there's a prince there that he wants to have a wife and all that sort of thing. All the women go to the ball. And the fairy godmother, who obviously a fairy godmother is a demon spirit, came to her the night of the ball. And she didn't get Cinderella out of the poverty or change the relationship she had with her stepmother. She just wanted to give her a chance to go after the goal of the man by dressing her up and using a pumpkin, change that into a coach, and then she used 6 mice, changed them into 6 horses, and then she used a rat, which is symbolic of a man. Then she used a lizard, which is symbolic of the man's penis, and changes the lizard into a footman. That's the man who rides the coach. And so Cinderella, she goes to the ball, and it's 12 o'clock, which is a midnight hour. She has to go back to her cruel condition, which the fairy godmother didn't try to correct at all. But nonetheless, she is gold digging and hunting, and she, of course, drops her shoe as the story goes, and we're back to these red shoes again, and red being symbolic of the Little Red Robin Hood, and the theme is over and over embedded. And so she's the only one that could fit into the shoe, and she gets the princess. So basically, the woman, the beauty in her charm is all she needs, and she's actually hunting for gold. She's always after wealth, the woman is. And of course, the evil women are in dark colors, black colors, because black is evil. This is embedded into the theme of Cinderella. Just by nuts and bolts of racism. Then we have the famous Little Red Riding Hood. She went to her grandmother's house. Her grandmother lived in a forest by herself, a sick old woman. The grandmother's single. Little Red Robin Hood's mother's single. We have these single women. And the sick old grandmother's living in the woods, and she sends a basket with wine in it for the sick elderly woman. And of course, Little Red Riding Hood obviously has bad vision, and she doesn't know a wolf from her grandmother. And obviously, Little Red Riding Hood was never told that there's danger in the forest. And she seems to be perfectly all right with a wolf talking to her in the forest. And she goes in the forest unaware of the dangers in it, yet she lives in the forest. And why the mother wants to send Little Red Riding Hood off by herself and she knows there's wolves in the forest obviously indicates some form of child abuse in the first place. But in any case, Little Red Riding Hood seems to accept the fact that the wolf can talk, and she talks to the wolf, and the wolf's talking to her. It's no big surprise, and she goes and picks flowers, because the wolf told her to pick some flowers, and the flowers represent fertility. All this is taken as normal. And her mother told her not to go off the path in the first place. So don't go off the path, go straight to your grandmother's house. She goes off the path, picks some flowers because some wolf told her. So she disobeys her mother. And then the wolf goes to the grandmother's house in a wolf's voice and knocks on the door and said, "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood." And her grandmother's hearing must be pretty bad because the door was open, plus the wolf can only sound like a wolf. And so she didn't recognize her own granddaughter's voice. All these things are just taken as normal. And the wolf, of course, he swallows the grandmother, her clothes, her shoes, and everything, which is a form of pregnancy. Symbolically, the wolf becomes pregnant. And he puts on the nightgown, which is an African garb, and gets into bed with this big stomach since now pregnant with the grandmother, since he swallowed her. In any case, the wolf, Little Red Riding Hood, comes into the house and said, "Oh, Grandma, what big teeth you have," as if she doesn't know human teeth from dog's teeth. The whole thing is really illogical, but the imaging is there. And of course, the wolf ate Little Red Riding Hood, and he becomes pregnant again. And then the hunter sees this whole thing, and he knocks on the door. Why he knocks on the door is beyond me. He didn't hear anything. He just happened to be in the woods. Knocked on the door, and the wolf was asleep with this big stomach. So he cuts open the wolf's stomach, which means he gives birth to Little Red Riding Hood and the grandmother. So we have a rebirth and regeneration symbolism, and then Little Red Riding Hood puts stones in the wolf's stomach and sews it back up. And the wolf wakes up and tries to run, but since he had stones in his stomach, he couldn't run too good. And the hunter kills the wolf, skins him, takes the fur, which gives him the power of the wolf, and they drink the wine and have a good time. The whole story is rather absurd when you look at it, but it's the imaging that's bad. That's why we have this red constantly. We have the fire, the sun god. We have the wolf, which is the dog that guards the gate. We have the wine, we have the grapes, we have the bed, which is a seduction scene, as I mentioned before. It's always sexual related. It goes over and over and over again. But I just want to show you about this red here. It's no accident that they pick red, because as you can see from this holistic chart, that red is down in the area of the sex organs. The perineum, the sex organ, closer to the behind, the rectum, the anus. Orange would be the ovaries and testicles, but red is in the area of the sex organs as well as the anus. It's associated with the anus mostly in European culture, but generally speaking, red is associated with the sex organs. So you get that red color over and over again because people associate it with sex. No accident again. This kind of embedding. So from now on, when you see these little fairy tales, as they're commonly called today, you can understand the symbolism of Jack and Jill that went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. The well represented the penis, the water represented semen. We have Jack and Jill holding the semen here in the bucket, and they're going up the hill. The hill represents erection. And once they get the semen from the erection, that's when Jack falls down and breaks his crown, which means he has sexual excitement. And then Jill comes tumbling after him. Now she's coming down off her sexual excitation. Again, we have the woods, the forest, where some danger is lurking. The same thing is repeated. There's always some house in the forest, Hansel and Gretel, the wolf, the grandmother's house. The rabbits are very sexual. Nothing breeds more than a rabbit. We associate rabbits with sex and breeding. So the whole theme of this is sexual embedding. And then we wonder what's wrong with our children. But we're feeding them these nursery rhymes, and basically the nursery rhymes approve violence. They approve the mutilation of the body, where wolves are killing someone and swallowing them. And they approve cannibalism, where people are being eaten. And they approve murder and injury to others. Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop and the baby falls down. And bodily harm to children, where children are being abused. Cinderella is being abused by her stepmother. This bodily harm and rape is always approved, where a prince comes by, sees a beautiful lady, doesn't talk to her, just knows her names and proceeds to have sex with her. That's known as petty rape. All of these themes are hammered into the children over and over and over again, and then we wonder what's going on. I mentioned this Hansel and Gretel, which in itself is an ugly theme. But here again we have the house in the woods, we have the stepmother, and the woodcutter who were married, and they have this child abuse going on with Hansel and Gretel. And the stepmother wants to get rid of the children because they say they don't have enough food and stuff to survive, so they want to get rid of the children. Her way of getting rid of the children is to send them off in the woods. And the father goes along with the stepmother doing this to his blood children. And so he says, oh no, but he says it reluctantly in the story. So the woman told the husband to take the children to the woods and leave them there. And he takes his own children to the woods and leave them there. And the children overhear the stepmother telling the father the scheme, and that's when they decide to sneak out the house, fill their pockets with rocks, and throw rocks along the trail as the stepmother takes them into the woods. And that's why they were able to find their way back the first night the stepmother did it, because they just looked where the rocks were. But again, the stepmother wanted to get rid of the children, and she was abusing them. The father lets this go on, and this time they put some bread in their pocket, and they throw breadcrumbs. But unwittingly, a bird eats the breadcrumbs, and the bird is symbolic. It's a black bird that does this, of course. Eats the breadcrumbs, and the bird is symbolic of sex, destruction. You have the bird of youth, the bird. In European culture, a bird is a penis, or a cock, a rooster. A cock is a penis. So you have the penis destroying the food of the children. That's the symbolic embedding there. And the children walked through the woods, and for 2 days, and the third day they came to this gingerbread house. Remember 3 bears, 3 pigs. On the third day they came to the gingerbread house, the candy house, and started eating on it. And this witch in there wanted to know who was messing with the house, of course. And the witch acted like the children wouldn't eat her sweets. She seemed to be so totally surprised. She had this candy house, and children would come by and eat on it. She's surprised at the whole thing, when actually the house is made out of candy to bait children. This is a children trap, again, so they can abuse the children. So the witch invites them in, feeds them, they fall asleep, and on the 4th day, she locks Hansel in a cage, and Gretel brought some food, and Hansel has used a chicken bone, which he gave to the wolf, the witch, and the witch thought that this chicken bone was him, so she just wasn't giving him any food, and he was getting skinnier and skinnier and skinnier because he was starving to death. So again, we have child abuse. So the wolf couldn't, the witch who was testing his finger to see how whether he was starving, he would always give her the chicken bone. So this woman couldn't tell the difference between a chicken bone and a finger, which is absurd in itself. And after a month, which is a lunar cycle, she eats Hansel. And then she bakes Gretel, but Gretel had a scheme because the lady was going to bake her, so Gretel, she stuck her head in the oven to test to see how hot it was, but Gretel acted like she didn't understand how to put her head in the oven to see how hot it was, so the witch went over there to demonstrate and stuck her head in there, and Gretel pushed the woman in the oven and, of course, killed her, baked her to death. So we have child abuse, we have the whole theme is abusive, how the children abuse, the stepmother abuses, the lady abuses, sets children trap, and of course Hansel and Gretel, they sing all over the house, and they found pearls, and they just proceeded to loot the woman's house. Took the pearls and the diamonds, and they stole them. They went back to the lake and asked a white goose to take them across, and it did, and they found the home where their stepmother was dead by this time, and they stayed with their father happily ever after and gave him the diamonds. and they weren't hungry anymore, even though the father allowed them to be abused or took them to the woods to get rid of them. All this is going on, but they say nothing about the father. Then you have the prince, the frog prince, and of course the tongue of the frog represents the penis, and the prince changes into a frog. So you have the princess, he sits by a deep well in the woods. This is where this princess sits by a deep well, and she tosses a gold ball in it, and of course the ball represents a penis, and the water represents semen, and the gold ball represents rebirth. And she tosses this ball into a well, and the frog said he could get it for her because she was just playing with her ball by the well for some reason. And it wasn't a well, and the frog said he could get it for her, and of course he retrieved it for her. But he said, I'll get it for you, but you have to let me sleep with you and eat with you and do other little sexual things with you. And the princess said yes to this request of the frog. She just didn't believe he could get it in the first place. He got the ball, gave it back to her, and the princess forgot about the promise that she would let this frog sleep with her and eat with her and sit in her lap and all this sort of thing. And why a frog wants to mate with a woman is beyond me, but the frog represents rebirth and regeneration, and it also represents the man's penis. So it was a royal dinner, and the frog knocked on the door and said he wanted to come in, and he wanted to be with the princess, and the king said no, and then the frog told the king about what had happened. So the king said, you have to do what the frog said do. So he told the daughter she had to sleep with the frog. And so the daughter put the frog in a corner like that, and she wouldn't sleep with the frog. So the princess cried about the whole incident, and the frog jumped up in the bed with her, and the princess threw the frog against the wall, and the frog fell down, and he turned into a prince. And the prince said, will you be my wife? And the princess said yes. And why he wanted to marry a woman who was so cruel to him is beyond me. Threw him up against the wall, lied to him, and all this goes on to show how evil and deceitful women are, even the ones, especially the ones with the most beauty. So obviously the woman is mentally unstable, abusive, and lies, and has sex with animals in the story. But this is transmitted to our children. This is the frog prince. These stories are not innocent at all. They're not. We have to be aware of this. The theme, the behavioral themes in them are women are basically pure, and their sexual charm causes men to be bad in their behavior. Women are in relationships because their sexual charm is rated higher than their intelligence. They're always beautiful, and therefore they can marry the prince. It has nothing to do with intelligence. The women, they must be in a battle, a conflict between good and evil. To lose a battle means a character, it means that there's something wrong with your character, there's something wrong with your morality, you have a spiritual deficit if you lose this battle in life. Good wins over evil, therefore the Caucasians are good. God, prophets, or the universe or a miracle will save you because you're incapable of saving yourself. So black people are taught by these fairy tales that they can't save themselves. They have to wait for a prophet, a savior, a messiah, and that good wins over evil, so subconsciously black people think that they are evil because the fairy tales embed this over and over and over again. If you are winning, it's because you're good. And if you lose your battle against the Caucasians who are good, that means that you have some sort of character problem, you have some morality problem, you have a spiritual deficit, there's something wrong with your karma. The universe is going to save you. And all these little themes we search for. So we always search for something to escape us from our predicament. I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. We always like escape songs. And we wonder why these things are going on. Then you have the shoemaker and the elves. The shoemaker and the elves theme. Again, we have a poor couple who don't have any children. Only lever to make one pair of shoes. So the man cuts out a pattern for this pair of shoes and leaves it on a bench. And while he's asleep, these elves come and make the shoes. So he sells the shoes, and he's able to buy enough leather to make 4 pairs of shoes. Then he makes 4 pairs of shoes, and he's able to make more money, and he's no longer poor, and he's wealthy, and he wants to thank whoever it is doing this. So him and his wife stay up at night and hide in the closet and see these elves come out and make shoes. And in gratitude, they make clothes for the elves. and the elves put on the clothes, and they leave. So all they get for all the wealth they've given to this couple is a pair of clothes. It's a very sad theme, meaning that the poor, the elves, can be satisfied with good clothes but not wealth. They don't need to be wealthy. All they need is to look good, have the best clothes, designer jeans, all that sort of thing. This theme is embedded in our children, to want clothes, to want to look good, but we don't want the wealth at all. We're happy. We're singing. We're rapping. All this is subliminally broadcast to our children by these fairy tales. We really need to look at them. We need to look at the Snow White. The queen sewing pricks her finger, which is a symbol of blood, and the finger is a symbol of the penis, and the blood is a symbol of the period. And she pricks her finger by an open window. She takes her finger to an open window to cool it. This is how you cool down a hot penis, by giving it some more behind. The behind is a cooling sexual involvement for the man. That's why they have anal sex and vaginal sex. It's all embedded in this Snow White thing. And it's 3 drops of blood, mind you. 3 pigs, 3 wise men that drop from her finger and fall on the snow, which represent menstruation blood. And this is what's taught to the child. So in this lady, the birth, Snow White, she dies shortly after birth, and a new queen, which is a resurrection of her, which is the true evil and cruel one, is punishing her for her sexuality. The queen looks in the mirror and says, Snow White didn't die, but I'm trying to say the queen looks in this mirror and says, who's the fairest of it all? The mirror represents your reflection, your double, which we call your ka. Who's the fairest of it all? And they say, well, Snow White is 100 times fairer than you. And fair is the word for white. You're fair white. Who is the whitest of them all? And so the mirror says, Snow White is 100 times whiter than you, the fairest of them all. And the queen told the huntsman to find take the Snow White out somewhere and kill her, and bring back the heart. And the heart is why you give a person the heart on Valentine's Day, which means that you're fair, which means that you're beauty, and all that sort of thing. And the huntsman takes Snow White out to the woods and lets her go, and kills a deer and gives a deer's heart to the lady. And Snow White wanders in the woods and is found by these 7 dwarfs, who represent the 7 planets. And she went in their house and ate their food and drank their food and went to sleep in their bed, which is a symbol of seduction. And these 7 dwarfs, of course, are wealthy men. They are miners. They work in the mine, and they're wealthy. And they work in gold mines. We get into the symbol of the colors again. And they sell gold and stuff to earn a living. And they warn Snow White not to let anyone in their house. They say, you can stay here, Snow White, but don't let anyone out, but you got to cook. You got to keep our house clean for us. And Snow White stays there. But one day she let this woman bring by some apples, and she decided to bite the apple, and she bit the apple poisoned her, and she went to sleep in the forest. And on the dwarfs cried for 3 days, and then they decide to bury her. We get that symbol of 3s again. And the dwarfs decide to bury her, and this prince comes along and wakes her out of her sleep. Out of her sleep. Now we see that same theme again of Osiris in the coffin. The 7s is part of the lunar cycle, 7, 14, 21, 28. We have the lunar cycle again. We have the fire, the sun god. We have Snow White in the coffin now instead of Osiris. And we have this blackbird, which is Isis again, hovering around the coffin to reflect light. We have the African theme, but it's so distorted we don't see it. So that way when we present this theme to our children, they still have this hardwired in their brain about the Snow White and this whole business. So in any case, they bury in a cave, and she's asleep, and the prince comes by and sees how beautiful she is and wants to marry her and kisses her and brings her back to life. And the queen says, who's the fairest of them all? And the mirror says Snow White, and she's really upset about this whole incident in the Snow White and the 7 dwarfs, or the 7 lunar cycles. But it helps to instill in us that that sex, the hidden meaning is that sex is evil, and only the European type sex and mating saves you from evil. And sex slang words are curse words. All the curse words are sexual slang words. So, sex is a curse. Then you have the slang words for sexual intercourse are dirty words. Don't talk dirty around children. Don't curse around children. So therefore, sex is dirty. Bad relationships are caused by emotional sex. You're emotionally involved with the woman because she's beautiful and captivating. Not that she's contributing to ma'at, truth and justice and all that sort of thing. It's her beauty that gets her in trouble. It's always her beauty. It's always emotionalism. So when we start seeing these themes again, we have to be more aware of the embedding that's going on. As I mentioned when I started with this talk on the damage of fairy tales, the penis and the vagina, the fiddler, the Pied Piper calling out this animalism, attracting the trueness of the children with the animalism, the penis symbol, the forest being dangerous, the house in the forest, the dog with the red on, Cinderella, Little Red Robin Hood, the man, the cow jumping over the moon, the female god trying to destroy the penis with her vagina. The theme is embedded there. And as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And to reconstitute our village, to get back our children, we have to get them back with our stories. We cannot use the European stories. They will lead our children into crime. They will lead our children into conflict with African culture, and therefore in conflict with themselves. It's very important. We have to use our highlight the eternal relationship. They highlight that for us. They highlight the internal relationship. They highlight the village, the family, the child, the ancestors, the babysitting system, and all that's centered around Ma'at. That's why we need our stories. Our stories help our children to be programmed in an African way. Helps to give the stories, give them the motion to be motivated to be attached to our African belief system and our African morality and our African Ma'at system of truth, justice, and righteousness. And remember that these themes are repeated over and over and over again. The themes of the fairy tales. These themes are in the movies and the newspapers. The human race loses its purification in some way. Through a job, through bad relationships, you lose your purification. You become immortal. You lose your immortality. And you have to ask for forgiveness for your fall, your imperfection, your sins. So you go to meditate and say mantras and say these positive affirmations because you're asking for forgiveness for your humanness, because there's something embeddedly wrong with you. That's what the fairy tales tell you. You cannot trust your nature. You have to be rescued from sin by a prophet or a miracle or God. Everything is up. If you lose your money, God meant it to be that way. If you have a bad day is a lesson for you. Everything is up. Everything is godly. Some things are just bad. So therefore you say that slavery is up. There's some godly reason why we are enslaved. Because the fairy tales teach you that everything is up, caused by God. Ultimately, it causes good fortune and bad fortune. It's divine choice. Your life is written for you. Your destiny is written for you. All you're going to do is follow it. By looking at the fairy tales with clearness, when we see this embedding in commercials, we know where it's coming from. They extend it this far. We talked about the little girl playing with the ball by the water fountain. It falls in the water fountain, and then the frog says he can retrieve the ball. We go back to ball, because if we tie them back to the fairy tales, they're tying the culture back to its beginning, to the Oedipus syndrome, to that mentality, to all those things. And we have to tie our children back to our fairy tales, which put them back 4,000 years as a death to our fairy tales. So here we have this embedding. We have that red again. Remember Little Red Riding Hood? The same images over and over and over again. We have the unity, the couples are looking in the same direction. This lady's on her right foot. This man's on his right foot. This lady's on her right foot. This man is on his right foot. They are both looking in the same direction. We have the red. We have the pink, symbolic of Little Red Riding Hood, remember? And they're both unified. They're together. He's holding her, he's holding her. But the black couple, as you can see, both of them are on their left foot. They're out of sync with reality. They're out of step with rightness, with whiteness. You see? And we're carrying the golf club as if it is a club in a violent sort of way over our shoulder to strike someone with. And of course, we're not looking in the same direction. We're not standing together. We're apart, and we're walking on the white people's shadows. And begging people always got their hand out. So this negativism in this commercial here for a memory kind of supplement goes all the way back to the fairy tales. Just like Enemy of the People, Men in Black, all the stories tie back to a fairy tale, tie back to the culture, which we are trying to get out of our system, but it's constantly put at us. And look at this little commercial. See the forest again? You have some challenge to go through in the forest. Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood. Always a challenge, always in the forest. And again we have the red. Again we have the couple running together, looking at each other in unity. You see. Again we have the same thing. They are in motion. They are going somewhere. They're going to the right. They're in the area going toward righteousness. We're over on the left side, left out. We're the only people not moving in this commercial. And we are blue. The man is blue. We are not looking at each other. And the word that's over us is worries. Black people are worried for white people. And it's natural for us to be worried because we are poor. And of course, black women are easy to have sex with. So we have the word easy on the black woman, worry next to the couple. And they're sitting down on their lazy behind. Don't want to do no work on welfare. All this is embedded in this commercial here. This lady's rolling on the roller skates, but she's pointing up to the sky, to a higher self. This lady's pointing up to a higher self. What are we doing? Pointing down to the ground. The embedding is there. Of course, we have the theme with the water, the sexual theme with the semen, the water, that sort of thing, the erections here. It's all there if you look at it. But these images are projected at us when we're young, so they just keep projecting the same image over and over again to sell their merchandise. And things become so obvious that we don't even see it sometimes. We don't see it sometimes. This is what you call a minstrel character. This is how white people thought black people looked. They paint us with big lips, nappy, kinky hair, eyes sticking, popping out because we're afraid of the dark, we're afraid of shadows. We are fearful people, you see. We're dressed up and we're afraid. And of course, McDonald has big lips and an African wig, which is red. We're back to the red again. Little Red Riding Hood, the red shoes, and Cinderella, the red again. It's embedded in us so deeply that sometimes we miss it. So this is the self-hatred, where we hate the witch who's wearing black, the wicked witch of the west and the east. As long as they use these childish themes, the same thing is used in E.T., the famous movie. E.T. is like someone from outer space coming to rescue the people on Earth with kindness. It's the same theme, that we have to be rescued from our predicament by a prophet, a messiah, the universe, nature. Now we have the embedding of sex, and blue is associated with black people. So right away we know this is sexual involvement. Right away. So when we look at the fairy tales, we have to be more clear about that. I want to show you how they embedded the sex in this. When you blow it up and look at it closely, then you see. So when we look at the fairy tales, we have to look at them with an African eye and realize that we cannot use European fairy tales with black children. It embeds European culture, bonds them to European culture, European symbolism, European sexuality, European values, Europeans' relationship problems, European-ness. We de-Africanize our children with the European fairy tales. We have to use African fairy tales, African myths to bond them back to the deep culture that we possess and the richness that we own as our birthright as melanin-dominant people. European fairy tales are dangerous.